Hello? Shai, naririnig mo kami?
Yes, pero may static konti.
Ha?
May static sound siya
Hindi.
na pag...
Malapit kasi ako sa speaker.
Okay.
I-try mo dun sa gitna banda.
Hello, ate. Clear na po.
Clear ang audio. Teka, i-record ko to sa
Sa,
secretariat.
sa phone natin. Thanks po. Hello? Hello. Ate Shai. Testing 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Hello,
Okay
hello,
lang
hello.
audio. Yeah, it's good naman. May ano lang talaga, merong wiring. Hindi ko maintindihan eh. May static siya. Pakinggan niyo yung sinend ko na audio.
Okay po. Hello? Hello po. Ate, pa-record po ulit kung meron pang ano. Ayan, nilalayo ko na po yung mic sa bibig ko. Hello, Ate Shai?
Actually, kahit hindi ka magsalita, meron eh. I mean, yung audio mo, okay. Sige, huwag ka magsalita.
May umuubo.
Oo, yun, exactly. Yun, nawala. I don't know what you guys did, but nawala yung ugong. But I also can't hear you if you're talking.
Hello. Hello. Eto na. Can you
Yes.
hear me? Testing. 1, 2, 3. Clear na po ba ang audio? Wala na po bang ugong?
Perfect.
Hello? Testing. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Sige po. Perfect. 2. Hello? 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 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Testing. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Hello? Hello? Clear na po ba ang audio? Hello? Testing. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Opo.
mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
In a world where conformity stifles creativity, there's a place where art and technology thrive and dreams come alive. Welcome to iACADEMY, where your passion can change not only your future, but also the world around you.
Art is a form of escapism for me, a way where I can escape into a whole new universe where I make rules. Art has also been quite therapeutic, a matter of self-expression that no one could ever express. But it wasn't until I stepped foot in that academy that I understand the true transformative power of art.
Thanks to iACADEMY's second degree real estate management program, I carry with me not just a degree, but also a sense of purpose. iACADEMY has really been a great investment in my career growth.
I'm John Cuison. I'm the Dean of the School of Design and the Arts, or SODA. As an educator, my goal is not only to teach technique and skills, but also to ignite passion for my students. I think that art education can change lives. It can open doors or opportunities that would have otherwise remained closed.
At iACADEMY, we believe in an education that goes beyond textbooks and lectures. Our classrooms are filled with the sound of collaboration as our students come together to create. In a world where conformity stifles
Mga kababayan,
In a world where conformity stifles creativity, there's a place
Hello. So, good afternoon, everyone. So, I hope you had a safe travel here in our venue. So, before we officially start our program, I would like to thank our partner who made this event possible. Thank you to iACADEMY for this wonderful venue for our 53rd Enablement Seminar. So, before we proceed with our program, let me share with you our seminar rules. All right. So for online participants, just a disclaimer for online participants, if you cannot hear me, you may include your response or your questions there in our Q&A chat box. So with our seminar rules, online participants, videos, and microphones are disabled all throughout the seminar except during the Q&A portion after each topic of presentation or discussion. There will also be a Q&A after each topic of the presentation or discussion. So for online attendees, you can post this question on our Q&A chat box. So for the secretariat, we will be recording the online Zoom seminar for documentation purposes. And for our on-site participants today, kindly mute your phones and laptops for the duration of the event. So now may I please request everyone to stand up for the singing of the Philippine National Anthem.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
You may now take your seat. So, a pleasant afternoon to everyone and to our audiences online. I'm sure we are joined with many audiences online. We're about how many now, Miss Ayn? 50 plus. So, wow. So, but thank you. Thank you to our on-site participant who took their time to be with us today in our enablement seminar. So, to introduce myself, I'm Camilo Campo, the Industry Relations Officer of PSIA, and I am delighted to be your host for this afternoon. And I welcome you all to PSIA's 53rd Enablement Seminar entitled Kubernetes Best Practices. So, before we proceed with our speaker, I will now be giving the floor to iACADEMY, so let us all watch this video.
All right. Thank you once again, iACADEMY. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our first speaker for this afternoon. So our first speaker has 14 years of experience in IT, entrepreneurship, startups, management, software engineering, and cloud computing. He brings wealth of knowledge and expertise to the table. He has founded two startups, successfully exiting the first through acquisition. Currently, he is focused on founding startups in the Philippines to foster entrepreneurship and stimulate job creation locally. His passion for technology allows him to unlock his value from both strategic and tactical perspectives. So this afternoon, he will be discussing instrumenting apps on Kubernetes using Prometheus and Grafana. So let us all welcome and give a round of applause to Mr. Raymond Del Rosario.
Hello. Hi. A happy rainy afternoon. Okay, so I'm Raymond. No? I'll be discussing instrumenting apps. So that will also cover monitoring. Who here already uses Kubernetes? What use case, if you may share? Production, R&D, production? Si sir? Development monitoring. Okay. Tapos hopefully someone in the Zoom call no can also raise their hands. No? So the level of detail that I will discuss is I'm assuming that you're already using Kubernetes, no? Hmm? Ay, okay. Okay, so medyo... Okay, so I will assume that you are sort of users of Kubernetes, but if someone here likes to like contemplate if, contemplating if you still want to go to Kubernetes, I can sort of accommodate some questions like that. But if you're, you're somewhat there now, you're using Kubernetes in production, R&D, prototyping, whatever it is, what I'll be showing is something that will be interesting to you. Okay? Next slide. So our agenda today is to discuss Prometheus and Grafana and an example using Spring. But actually, this will work naman with any language, no? Next. So Prometheus is, next slide. So this is what we want to achieve by using Prometheus and Grafana. Okay? So if you're like operating a like network operation center or you're a small team na kayo na rin yung nagde-develop, kayo yung nagde-deploy, something like this is useful. Okay? Especially if you're coming from the world of Nagios, Ganglia, and similar tools. This is how we do it in Kubernetes. The beauty of Prometheus is, for sure may magtatanong na ito, can it also work if I'm not using Kubernetes? Short answer is yes, pero mas marami kang gagawing configuration. Okay? It's just smoother if you happen to be using Kubernetes. Okay? Next. So Prometheus, it's a monitoring and alerting toolkit. So again, monitoring has no use if you do not use the alerts. Okay? And the feature is, it's a time series database. Meaning, hindi siya SQL, hindi rin siya categorized as NoSQL. It's a time series where you allocate a fixed space storage. Then over time, you just, you like pinapurge me old records, then you to accommodate new records. But basically, yung disk space that you allocate is fixed. And it's an n-dimension data model. So in addition to recording timestamps, of course, we have metadata attached to each timestamp. And of course, for us to be able to get value from the data within, we have a query language called PromQL. So it's sort of similar, well, wala siyang kahawig, pero medyo hawig siya with sort of JSON, okay? Later, I'll show you how it looks like. And the style of Prometheus is, this is a pull-based system. Okay? So if you have an app, typically you need to make Prometheus and the app communicate. So Prometheus can scrape, so I'm saying scrape, no? Prometheus will scrape those metrics every X minutes. So that's how it works in a nutshell. Okay? Next. Hopefully nakikita niyo yung text size, no? So Prometheus originated from SoundCloud. So like any other famous open source technology, it solves a problem of the author. Okay. Then sometime in 2016, it became a cloud native computing foundation incubation project. Then because of wide use, it graduated very early in 2018. Okay. Next slide. So just an overview of architecture. Our point of interest is actually the one in the middle. So Prometheus server, inside you have your time series database. You have an HTTP server because that's how it will serve the data or the metrics to us, no? Tapos, on the surrounding left side, there's actually a way for you to push metrics. If your architecture nyo does not permit like pulling metrics, there's also a way to do it using push gateway. Pero I recommend if you can do pull-based kasi mas madali. Okay. Then on the right side, we have, well, the web UI. I will differentiate yung Prometheus web UI later on with Grafana. But basically, the web UI is just a basic terminal where you could inspect the data. Pero you will not use it if you want to build in dashboard what I showed you earlier. Okay. Then optionally, you could integrate with things like PagerDuty, email, even Slack, actually, if you're using those. Of course, importante alerts when you're monitoring. Okay. Next slide. So if you're using Kubernetes now, everyone's familiar na with service, no? Tapos, typically, if you want Prometheus to scrape yung metrics of your app, you just put 3 annotations in your service. Okay? So, very minimal impact to your code. Yung actually first annotation, which is the slash path, actually ano yan, non-standard path yan. The standard is slash metrics. Pero for some reason, no, yung Java implementation of Prometheus metrics loves to be hipster for some reason. Okay? Okay? So ano yan? This is the way to override. Then the port, of course, and of course, scrape through. Okay? So very minimal impact on any deployment that you have now. Okay? Next slide. So Prometheus, we think of metrics, okay? There are different types of metrics. The first is counter. The data we store using counter is usually totals. Example can be the total request served since release 1.0 or release 2.1, okay? Or total transactions completed since yesterday. Okay, so it's a continuously increasing number. Okay. Then I guess last example would be total number of errors. Okay. If later I will show you how to visualize counters kasi by default useless yung visualization of counter is always going up. There's a way later I'll show you how to visualize it na may delta. Para you can differentiate, say on day 1 something happened, may incident, we have a spike of errors. Then on day 2 we resolved it. Then it disappeared. Later I'll show you how it. Okay, so anything that deals with totals, counters are the best way to do it. Next slide. Next, we have the gauge. So gauge is something that goes between 0 and an arbitrary limit. So an example of gauge is, well, current memory. Current memory can refer just to one machine or pwedeng yung buong cluster. Or pwede rin yung namespace. Like, kunyari, project number 1, pasaway to, malakas kumain ng memory. Makikita mo yan dun. Okay? Next is current request. So, for example, it's payday. You're curious. Gano'n ba talaga karami on the 15 and 30? Gauge ang babagay dun. Then, of course, current number of users. For payday, usually, you're curious, no? Or you could even go with SQL databases. Gusto mo i-visualize sila yung DB connections. Okay? Then, one last example would be, for example, you have a very large Kubernetes cluster, say 100 nodes. You want to see ilan dun yung gumagana, ilan yung sira, or ilan yung nag-down, etc. So gauge are actually the best for that. Okay, so you would not use counters for these since walang sense. Next slide. Next are histograms. So histograms are best used if you want to instrument. Okay, so example is request durations. You want to know how many requests took between 0 to 100 milliseconds. Then you have a total there. Okay. Next example is how many requests took between 0 megabytes and 100 megabytes, for example. So you have a total there. Then last is query durations. Which of our API methods took the longest from, say, took anywhere from 0 to 300 milliseconds, for example. Okay, so those are some examples where histogram is useful. Okay, next slide. Summaries are like histograms plus plus, pero it provides convenience data related to totals. So of course, if you have a sample, you need to know how many samples those are, diba? So that's what summaries are. So summaries are actually a new feature, no, that came out of beta. So a while back, we only had the 3 counters, gauges, and histograms. Okay, next slide. Okay, so what I'm showing you now is yung PromQL. Okay, so the color blue is the name of the metric. So notice that our convention in Prometheus is snake case. And typically, yung leftmost word is your project specific name. Say, project1 _ current users. Okay, so that's a convention. Tapos, the code within the brackets are your filters. What I'm saying here is, I want to know how many API requests na post ang pumasok. Okay? Then, I'm further drilling down. Gusto ko lang yung path na messages. Okay? So, this is useful for investigation. Like, someone claimed to be security breach, whatever it is. You have those filters. The beauty of filters is you also have regex. If gusto mong pattern-based yung matching mo, you can do it. Okay, in its simplest form, this is how PromQL looks like. Okay, next slide. That's it actually for Prometheus. In a nutshell, that's how it works. Okay. Next, we have Grafana. The demo will be at the end, no? So, next slide. Okay, so now we have Prometheus storing the data about our metrics. Now, where Grafana comes in is building of the dashboard that I showed you. Use a slide number 1 kanina. So what Grafana is, it's visualization and analytics. So by itself, it does not scrape metrics. It relies on a data source. So Grafana, to date, supports several data sources. Prometheus is one of the first class data sources for Grafana. Pero it can also connect to your SQL database, Postgres, MySQL, SQL Server, pwede rin naman. Okay? Tapos, if you have API endpoints that you want to visualize, you can also do it with Grafana. Okay? So for our presentation, we'll only cover metrics, but Grafana can also visualize logs and traces. Okay? Next slide. So this is an example of your architecture if you decide to roll out something like Prometheus and Grafana. So you have your app on the left side. providing metrics on a predefined path, typically your API. So in this case, no, the Java implementation decided gusto nila /actuator/Prometheus. In other languages, you will see this as /metrics. Typically in Node.js, Python, and Go, that's the trend. Okay? Then Prometheus will scrape the metrics every X minutes. Then Grafana, no, will just, again, query Prometheus for it to visualize. So next slide. So hopefully you see this slide. This is what we want to achieve. So what you're seeing now are counters, heat maps, states, etc., etc. Okay. So next slide. So the way to think in Grafana terms is we have a data source. Prometheus is one of those data sources. Okay. Then you have a plugin that talks between Grafana and the data source, sort of translation layer. Okay. Typically, well, right now, Grafana has a lot of plugins, Postgres included. Even mga Amazon Cloud, like if you want to scrape yung mga metrics coming from the cloud, gusto mong i-unify into, like, gusto mo lahat Grafana lahat, from all your clouds pwede. So those plugin is what responsible done. Query is, well, by the name, it's how we extract the data from the data source, which is usually technology specific. So kung SQL yung data source, again, SQL yung query mo. Kung Prometheus, Prometheus QL. Transforms are just, extra data massaging. Kasi, readily out of the box. If we think of rows and columns, hindi lahat ng data is readily presentable using just rows and columns. Sometimes you need to summarize, do some totals muna, some structure needed. So that's where transform is done. But it's actually optional for some use cases. Okay? And we have our most beautiful part, which is the visualization itself, the panel. Next slide. Yeah, so I'm just flashing some of the most used plugins. So if you happen to be using cloud, I'm hoping SQL, even actually flat file pwede. CSV files, even JSON, even API endpoints na nagsuserve lang ng JSON, you can actually treat those as data sources. Okay? So, nothing is saying na Grafana has always to go with Prometheus. Wala namang ganong rule. It just so happened that it's like the trend. Okay? Next. Yeah, so plugins are the ones mediating between data sources and Grafana. Because Grafana thinks in terms of data frames. Data frames basically parang dictionary. You have keys and values. Okay? So the plugins are the ones responsible for, that translation layer. If you plan to roll out your own plugin, ganun din. You'll just using Grafana API para magkaroon kayo ng viz. Pero I'm hoping you will not do that because, out of the box, ang dami ng plugins. So, next. Queries is the way we get data, which is, again, is technology specific. Okay. Next slide. Then the panels, because if you think of Grafana, it's like a big panel. Then per visualization, we call them the panels. So pwedeng meron kang line graph dito, meron kang pie chart, meron kang gauge on the bottom parts. Parang dashboard ng aeroplano, etc. Or car, diba? Parang ganun. So those are the panels. Next. If you're curious right now, what are the possibilities? You could go to this website right now. Browse nyo lang what's there. So maraming demo dashboards there. Okay? The beauty of Grafana pala, the dashboard itself, you could export that as JSON. So if you like to version control yung mismong dashboard, you can actually do that. Okay? If you want to say, gusto mo i-repeat na you have a dashboard specific just for dev, you want to carry over that to staging or production, pwede. Okay? Next. So what I've been talking about so far was scraping default metrics. When I say defaults, I'm saying CPU, memory, number of pods, number of containers, number of nodes, network bandwidth. Those are the defaults. Custom is domain specific. Say you're a banking app. One of your custom metrics can be number of ongoing deposits, number of ongoing withdrawals, etc. We could do that with Grafana and Prometheus. You just need to code no, in terms of the counters, the gauges, histograms, and summaries, yung stuff that you need to monitor. Okay? Next slide. So later, no, I have a demo which just generates a set of random numbers for us to, simulate usage of a sort of backend. Then I have a login and logout method to simulate gauges or to sort of track yung current users. Next slide. Then I'll just be using counters gauges now for this demo para hindi matagalan. Next slide. Tapos for this demo, I only have two metrics. One is the requests total, which is basically the total number of requests. And the next one is current number of users. Just to, make it simple. Next slide. Okay, so I'll just be talking about Java specific stuff now for this presentation. Pero when you search out there in your own language, marami naman ng SDKs available for publishing metrics for Prometheus. So if you happen to be using Java Spring, ito yung recommended library, Actuator. Next. So Actuator is authored by Spring. Tapos it helps you, not build things from scratch. Kasi, 90% of the time, you should be worrying about building features, not plumbing infrastructure. Okay, so when using Actuator, what you need to worry about is, if, for example, if you want to monitor number of ongoing transactions, your mindset should be, okay, how do I extract that from the database? And how do I get that data? How do I give it to Prometheus para ma-publish niya? That's like 95% of your must mindset when you're using something like this. Okay. Next slide. So again, architecture should be pull-based. So when possible, go with pull. Mas madali. So your app is called by Prometheus, then Grafana calls Prometheus to visualize. Next slide. So in your Gradle file, you just add some dependencies, just two. One is this, if you're happen to be using Spring Boot, no? So merong helper, library, actuator. Then the third dependency, that's the actual Prometheus library. So the actuator is sort of, middleman library to talk to the Prometheus library. Okay, next. So just FYI lang naman what's available. If you install actuator in your Spring app, if you visit these URLs, magkakaroon ka nito mga special paths. Okay? So just FYI. Next slide. Then, by default kasi, the metrics will not be published. You need some configuration to tell Actuator, okay, I need these metrics published. So this is how you do it. So very minimal sa config lang naman sa Spring. You just tell Actuator to publish itself. Yan. So ito yung settings for that. Next slide. Then, business as usual, run, boot run, Gradle W. Then you could already visit some metrics na nakapublish by default. Okay, so even with just editing the Gradle file, minimal impact sa code. Okay, next slide. So when you visit a browser, yung /actuator/Prometheus, this is what you will see. A Prometheus format na text, sort of text file. Okay, so it's typically in key value pairs. So what you will see by default is mga built-in metrics. So sa Java, you have metrics for JVM stuff, some OS stuff, I think, yung mga CPU, memory. Then, if you happen to be publishing your own metrics, dyan nililito yan. Okay? Again, remember yung convention natin, the leftmost should be your prefix. That should be your project-specific name. Next slide. Tapos, in your code sa Java, so by Spring, i-inject nyo sa yung meter registry. Then that's how you will tell Prometheus, okay, meron ako ng data about number of ongoing transactions. This is like registry, ito na yung data, bigay ko sa'yo. Next slide. Yeah, so this example is how you deal with counters. Okay, so I'm defining a counter named Spring Math request total, and I'm giving it a human-friendly description. Then I'm telling it to register with yung singleton na meter registry. Then from that point, hawak ko na yung request total na object. Anywhere in my code, I could increment and give it some data kung ano man kailangan niya. So for counters, increment lang meron. Sa gauge, you could increment, you could decrement. Sa histogram, you could say add sample. Okay, siya na bahala maglagay kung saang bucket yun sa histogram. Okay. Next slide. So if you happen to do it right, you'll see your own metric being published. So this is our own metric now. Tapos, if you notice, the left side is the name, the rightmost side is actual yung value ng metric. So this is a counter, no? So this is increasing only. Next. So ito naman pag gauge. So again, you use the instance of yung meter registry. You define using a builder. Give it a name. If you notice yung users nasa loob ng closure, the reason why this is a closure is expected to return the value at the time the metric was created. Okay? This could be a function din naman in your class, whatever it be. Pero kailangan, when Prometheus asks for your metric, kailangan fresh. Okay? Then, somewhere in your code, no, yung users plus plus, imaginary lang naman yan. This is how you will do it. So it's up to you how you want, ano yung coding style nyo to achieve this intention. Okay? Next slide. And hopefully, you do it right, you'll have your metrics published. Okay? Next slide. And when all things go right, we could build our dashboard. So this is an example of a JVM specific dashboard. So meron ito yung mga heap stuff, CPU, requests, etc. If you could go to Grafana, play.grafana.org, marami dong sample dashboard that you could already use out of the box, no? Even without creating from scratch. Import mo na yung JSON file to your own Grafana instance. Boom, meron ka ng dashboard. Then titweak mo na lang for your own needs. Okay? Next slide. So I will do a demo. Give me a while to set up. Okay, walang net.
So while waiting po for the demo of Sir Raymond, you may enjoy some refreshments po on our table at the back. We have sodas, iced teas, and juice po. Thanks po.
Recording in progress.
Kita naman. All right. So what I'm showing you now is yung Prometheus web UI. Again, yung Prometheus web UI is just a very basic UI for you to inspect what's living inside of Prometheus. So let's query a default metric. So let's say I want to know in my Kubernetes cluster how many nodes are running. So in my demo, I'm just using Minikube, no? So this is normally 1. So this will return yung value 1 then meron kang trending over time. So if this happens to decrease, you will see it here. Okay? Tapos say I want to gusto kong bilangin lahat ng running pods. So you have a function called count. You're counting the info, basically. So right now, I have 15 pods running on my local machine. Okay? So normally this will decrease or increase over time. Tapos, if you want to view, like cluster-wide, ilan na lang ba yung memory ko or how much am I using? So in this case, well, wala naman nag-deploy sa local ko. So this is stable. Pero this is approximately 8 gig. Okay? Tapos, if I want to like count how many pods are running per namespace, if you could see yung color coding niya, it differentiated between the pods running in Cube system, the pods running in Prometheus namespace, and Grafana. Sorry, in my custom metrics deployment, which is 1. Okay. Then, if you're curious, like this project is consuming so much CPU relative to the others, how do I visualize that? So, ayan. So, over time, si Cube system, based on my example, yan, naka-differentiate siya dyan. Okay. Then, last query is, I want to check memory usage per namespace. So if I break down the query, I'm using the default metric of container memory usage bytes. Then I'm telling Prometheus, i-return mo sa akin lahat ng data where the namespace is not blank. Which means, huwag mo ibabalik sa akin yung info about daemon sets. Kasi di ba daemon sets are not part of a namespace. So I'm only interested in pods which are part of an actual namespace. Then, I'm using sum by namespace. So this looks like SQL, diba? Group by namespace, then sum. Okay. So if you visualize that, we can see that Cube system is using about 400 plus megabytes. Prometheus is about 200 plus. My custom app is 200, yeah, mga 200. Then Grafana is like 50 megabytes. Okay. So that's it for Prometheus UI. Very basic, but not realistic for a real-world use case. It's just enough for you to check, uy, pumapasok na ba yung metrics from our app? Tama ba yung setup natin with Prometheus? This is the only use case for this. Now, we go for Grafana. So let's go back siguro 1 hour ago. 3 hours. Okay. So what I'm showing is the dashboard, actual dashboard. No? Then I have 2 panels. One is the requests total. So I'm visualizing yung total number of requests that I made to my app, my custom app earlier. So nagkaroon ng spike. This is intentional. So just use your imagination how this will be useful for your own use cases. No? This could be users or whatever. Then I have on the right side gauge. So gauge again is a number that fluctuates between 0 and an upper limit. So right now, one user is still logged in, so to speak. Okay? So this is how you do it. Then to add more visualization, you just add visualization. Then I'm just going to pull this down para you could see what's possible. So you have time series, bar charts, stats gauges, bar gauges, and a lot of overlapping visualization tools, which I will leave you to study at home. Okay? So this is more than enough for you to build your dream networks operation center. Okay? So whatever that dream is, hopefully Grafana will help you do that. And actually, that's it for my demo. I can now answer any questions.
Hello.
Yeah, you may now raise your hands both if you have questions for Sir Raymond. And for our online attendees, just input your questions on our Q&A chat box. Wag po kayo mahiya magtanong. Hindi naman po nangangagat si Sir Raymond.
Wala pong bayad. Yes, sir. Separate?
On a separate server with your...
Yung decision for that is actually up to you.
Okay.
Typically, for medium to large orgs, they have a dedicated DevOps cluster. Nandun lahat ng tooling related to DevOps. That's physically separate from your production apps, no? Para walang sharing of resources. But for smaller orgs, they cannot afford that. So, separate namespace yung Prometheus. Okay. Short answer.
And it's the same for Grafana or... Like,
Grafana is actually flexible anywhere naman yun. Basta when you add yung data source, basta it's network at the network visible si Prometheus to Grafana. So, yung placement is up to you. Flexible naman sila ang dalawa. Although merong setups like if you're like hyperscale, like you can have a Prometheus na specific lang sa isang project na bugbog na, no? Then, meron kang intention, for example, gusto kong ilagay sa main DevOps center ko yung metrics na for that high traffic project pwede. That's called federation. So, yung Prometheus na project specific will share metrics with yung central Prometheus. Then, along the way, you could tag metadata like this environment is production 1, production 2. Pag binasang may metrics na yun sa central Prometheus, naka-label na yun ng maayos. You could do your visualizations dun sa central. You could just leave yung project-specific Prometheus to just, pull metrics. Wala nang iba. Para hindi rin siya mabugbog. So that's the way to scale Prometheus.
Yeah. Another thing, kasi di ko na sure kung sa lahat ng AKS, we actually use kasi Azure to host the AKS clusters. So sa deployment sa AKS, pag tinitignan namin yung monitoring, meron dong sinasabi niya like Prometheus or Grafana trial periods. Is it because they're sort of like being absorbed by Microsoft or?
Yun yung mga hosted versions of Prometheus. Like if wala ka ng time to set up your own, you could do the paid yung at least hosted, hindi na nagda-down yun. If you're powerful enough or may budget kayo or time, di ba? You could do yung ginagawa natin ngayon, DIY install, pwede rin naman.
But those are like controlled by Microsoft.
Yun din yun. That's like 95% similar. Meron lang 5% integration na ginawa si Microsoft, for example, para gumana lang with Azure.
Thank you, sir.
Pero that's an option for your different needs.
Any more questions po for Sir Raymond? For online po, may questions po ba tayo?
Yes, sir. Sige po, sulitin nyo.
Sort of like limits into the data ingestion of Prometheus, like kailangan ganito kalaki yung storage space mo, or you have to like plan the minimum like 1 terabyte and it has to increment, or
okay.
within the span of like 1 day, it just recycles the logs, something like that.
Ang first step, of course, you need to test. Benchmark nyo muna how many metrics. Ang maganda sa time series database, you could allocate a fixed storage. Kasi yung ginagawa niya, kunyari 100 gig. If naubos na yon, yung mga old records, i-delete niya na yun. So yung storage mo fixed lang para magkaroon ng space para sa bago. So how big that chunk is actually up to your team. Pero you could leave it at 100 gig, depende na lang sa data retention policy nyo kung kulang ba yun o sobra. Pero pwede mo siyang i-100 gig, tatakbo yun. Yun nga lang, syempre, may mga mapopurge. So up to you. Any programming related questions. How do I implement this in my code? May mga ganun ba tayong questions? So we had an infra question, which I appreciate. May mga programmers ba dito? Devs. As a dev, what's my impact? What's the impact to my code? May mga ganun ba tayong questions? Short answer, minimal. Isipin nyo lang again yung additional logic to fetch yung data to power that metric, whatever that metric is. Yun lang ang magiging intrusion sa code. Other than that, the guys administering Prometheus will be happy enough. Kasi if you're conforming to the library standard, wala na halos gagawin yung admins. If you publish a new metric, for example, basta lilitaw na lang yun without any impact. If you do it right, of course.
So, any more other questions po for Sir Raymond? For online, meron po ba tayong question, Ms. Ayn? Okay. So,
how do I view it? Okay. Is there a website you recommend for creation of metrics collections? I guess you're asking if you want a baseline. Go to play.grafana.org. Marami na dong built-in metrics that's like useful for 80% of the population. Okay? Yung 20% na lang yung special na yun yung from scratch niya. Okay?
alright. So, may hahabol pa po ba na question for Sir Raymond? Sa online? Meron po. Okay. So, I think that's it. So, thank you, Sir Raymond. So, we will now take a short break. So, you may enjoy our snacks here at the back of the table, at the back, and there, and with the refreshments. So, we will have a 20-minute break. So, for our 15-minute break. We will have a 15-minute break po. So, we will be back. So, enjoy your snacks na po. So, our audiences online, you may now your coffee there in your remote places. So, thank you. Hello. So hello once again. So I hope you enjoyed your snacks, and to our audiences online, I hope you enjoyed your short break. So we are now ready to move on to our next speaker. So our next speaker is an enterprise consulting engineer at Orange and Bronze. With more than 15 years of experience, his expertise is building robust Java applications and implementing scalable Kubernetes solution. He is a certified Scrum Master and a seasoned software development trainer. And this afternoon, he will be discussing Introduction to GitOps. Let us all welcome and give a round of applause to Mr. Juno Aliento.
Hello, good afternoon. So, yeah, good afternoon po. So for the remaining of these talk, I'll be talking about GitOps, introduction to GitOps specifically. But before, I'll also make it quick. Alam ko busy kayo. So I'll try to make it quick. Yan. Tapos before I begin, sino po dito yung mga developers? Can I get a raise of hands? Developers? Walang developers. What about nasa side ng operations? Operations. Good. Yan, sige. Right. So GitOps. This one. Yeah. Oops. Yeah, sure. So before so yung presentation ko would be an overview of GitOps, and then later I'll do a demo kung paano gumagana yung GitOps workflow. So definition muna tayo, what is GitOps? So si GitOps is basically a pattern for deploying applications. Not just applications, you could also use yung GitOps workflow for your infrastructure provisioning. So hindi lang siya limited to deploying your application, automating your application deployment. You could also use GitOps for your infrastructure provisioning. Actually, sa GitOps, it borrowed yung idea of yung configuration natin both for application and infrastructure is nakalagay sa isang manifest file or nasa declared declaratively sa manifest file natin, right? And it borrowed it from the infrastructure as a code na idea. And from the term itself, GitOps, Git, in terms of yung manifest file natin, lahat yung configuration natin, yung source of truth niya is manggagaling sa Git, right? Kaya nga tinawag na GitOps. So yung main source of truth niya is galing sa Git. And then a bit of background lang, si GitOps, yung first na nakaisip sa kanya is yung CEO of Weaveworks back in 2017. Si Alex Richardson. Siya yung nakaisip ng GitOps. Kasi back then, naisip niya, most of their projects are already using Git. Why not use Git then for their deployment and as well as for their infrastructure provisioning? So, na-define na natin si GitOps. Ano naman yung, discuss naman natin yung some of the misconceptions when it comes to Git. So, si Git, hindi po siya full replacement ng CI/CD pipeline niyo, CI/CD tools niyo. So, if you already have an existing tools for your CI/CD, you could reuse those. Like if you're using AWS Code Build for building your application, or you're using Jenkins to build your application, to containers your application, you could still use those tools. Ang babaguhin lang ninyo is how you deploy your application or how you provision yung infrastructure ninyo, right? Also, it's not a substitute to the DevOps mindset. So, in fact, yung tools, yung team composition nyo, organization nyo, you could still retain kung ano yung meron kayo sa DevOps. Again, babaguhin lang ninyo is how you deploy yung application and how you provision yung infrastructure ninyo. Right? Yan. Now, in terms of principles naman, actually, itong list of principles here, I got this from yung OpenGitOps, opengitops.dev website. So, si OpenGitOps, it's a body or a group of people na objective is to standardize yung approach of implementing GitOps. So they listed down here yung mga principles na kailangan for GitOps. The first one being is declarative. As I said earlier, yung mga configuration natin, all of our configuration should be defined dun sa manifest file natin. Hindi, aside from being defined sa manifest file, sinabi din nila na it should be version controlled and immutable. Version controlled meaning, in terms of if we change something do sa configuration natin, we could, may history tayo ng mga changes natin. So from the original state to our current state, may history tayo kung ano mga nabago. Right? So meron kayong parang audit na lang din nung mga changes dun sa application configuration nyo as well as dun sa infrastructure configuration niyo. Immutable meaning, whatever is defined in your manifest file, dapat dun sa infrastructure or sa application niyo, yun din dapat yung applied sa kanya. Like, let's say for example, sa production environment ninyo, ang target number of instances niyo for your application is two instances of your application. Kung yun yung naka-define dun sa configuration file niyo, dapat ganun din lumabas dun sa production environment niyo. Alright? And then, they also mentioned na yung configuration, any changes in our configuration should be put automatically. So for example, from initial number of instances 2, binago natin yung number of instances natin sa configuration file natin, ginawa natin 10. Dapat, kung ano yung binago natin doon, automatically, without human intervention, using the tools that supports yung GitOps, GitOps workflow natin, should automatically apply yung nilagay natin doon sa configuration file natin. Alright? Sa demo, may kita nyo yun. And then lastly, continuous reconcile. So any changes dun sa current state ng production nyo or whatever environment, let's say for example, sa configuration file nyo, number of instances is 2. Tapos for some reason, may rogue developer na ginawa na instead of 2, ginawa ng 100 instances yung application niyo. Dapat yung tool na ginamit ginamit nyo for GitOps should be able to revert or ibalik yung previous state niya na dalawa lang dapat yung running dun sa target environment niyo. Clear? Even yung mga policies and everything, kung ano yung naka-define dun sa manifest file, dapat yun lang yung sundin. Clear? Questions? Wala pa. Now, in terms of architecture, kung gusto niyo i-adapt si GitOps, sobrang minimal lang yung impact nito dun sa architecture niyo. Kasi in terms of GitOps, ang dadagdag lang niyo is you just need to add a configuration, you need to introduce yung configuration file niyo, yung mga manifest file niyo, where you put yung mga desired state niyo. And then, for sure, meron naman na kayong Git, right? So you don't have to add that. And then, ang idadagdag na lang ninyo, if you're using Kubernetes, is yung mga GitOps operators. One of the GitOps operators, right? So maraming GitOps operators available. Yun. Si GitOps operator pala, ang trabaho lang niya is for it to pull yung desired state niyo from the Git repository. And then, if there are any changes or any divergence from the sorry, na-discuss ko ba to? Sige. Any divergence dun sa desired state niyo is babaguhin niya or i-apply lang niyo yung desired state niyo. Here. So yun na yung idadagdag natin. Notice pala na I mentioned here configuration, hindi source code. Kasi again, si GitOps kasi it's a complementary to your existing tools. Ang babaguhin lang talaga ninyo is yung how you deploy. So if you're using Jenkins to build your application, to containers application, continue using those. Ang papalitan lang ninyo is yung, siguro if you're using Jenkins, si Jenkins yung ginagamit to deploy your application. So yung approach na yon is you're pushing yung bagong configuration nyo papunta dun sa target Kubernetes cluster nyo. With GitOps, it's the other way around. It's the GitOps operator na installed dun sa Kubernetes nyo, the one that's pulling yung bagong state from your Git repository. Clear? So yan. And then, in terms of GitOps operators, again, maraming available GitOps operators na nasa wild. And I just listed here yung mga commonly used operators or yung mga gamit na gamit. The first one is yung FlaxCD, which is a purposely built case operator that lets you run GitOps workflow. So si Flux CD, it's a operator that you install inside your Kubernetes cluster, right? And then there's Argo CD, which is quite similar to Flux CD, but with additional features. With Argo CD kasi, unlike sa Flux CD kasi wala kayong UI, walang available UI for you to visualize yung components na installed dun sa cluster nyo. With Argo CD, they already have a web UI na pwede nyo gamitin to visualize kung ano man yung mga running dun sa Kubernetes cluster ninyo. Also, for user management, sa Argo CD kasi, bake-in na sa kanya yung user management. With Flux CD, if you need user management, you need to roll your own. Right? So, yun. And then there's Jenkins, which is similar to Jenkins, where you could create your pipeline. Ang difference lang kasi, sa Jenkins, the way you build pipelines, normally we use Jenkins file, right? Ando dun yung script natin to build our application, to continuous application, so on and so forth, to test our application, ando dun sa Jenkins file. With Jenkins, so Jenkins kasi it's using Tecton pipelines. So the way you build your pipelines different lang with Jenkins. Pero it's somewhat similar lang din naman yung yung use case niya. And it already comes with GitOps built-in. And then for those na sino dito gumagamit ng Terraform for infrastructure provisioning. Ayan, meron. For those na gumagamit ng Terraform for infrastructure, you might consider using Kubestack, which is a Terraform GitOps framework. So if you want to adapt GitOps for your infrastructure provisioning, you could consider yung Kubestack. Right. As mentioned earlier, si GitOps, hindi lang siya for application deployment. You could also use it for infrastructure automation. So for infrastructure automation, if ang target ninyo is, for example, you have a Kubernetes cluster and then you want to deploy Postgre database or you want to automate yung renewal ng SSL certificate ninyo. So normally you would install their cert manager. So to automate that, you could use Helm or Helm charts with the combination of Flux CD and Argo CD para automated yung create ng cert manager or pag-install ng cert manager or even yung pag-upgrade ng cert manager version ng cert manager niyo dun sa cluster niyo, which may demo tayo dun later. So yon. Then for those na are using Terraform, you could also consider yung Tofu controller. Sorry, Terraform controller siya before. It got renamed to Tofu controller na for some reason. So Tofu controller na siya ngayon. Then you could use Tofu controller to, if you have Terraform scripts, install lang si Tofu controller sa Kubernetes cluster niyo. Then you could use yung existing Terraform scripts niyo. Then si Tofu controller na bahala yung mag-automate nung if you have changes dun sa script niyo, automatically si Tofu controller na yung bahala mag-apply dun sa target infrastructure niyo. Clear? And then sa mga top 3 cloud providers natin, we have AWS, GCP, and Azure. Yung top 3 providers na, unfortunately, ang nag-provide lang ng yung built-in controllers talaga is si AWS. So si AWS, meron siyang tinatawag na AWS controllers for Kubernetes, which is a collection of controllers na pwede nyo gamitin to automate, like for example, if you want to automate your provision ng S3 controller, EC2 instances, pag-create ng VPC, virtual private network ninyo, pwede nyo gamitin yung one of the controllers available dun sa AWS controllers for Kubernetes. Right? For the other cloud providers, ang only option lang ninyo is yung Terraform. Fully, yun. Again, for application automation naman, there's Flux CD and Argo CD. Si Flux CD and Argo CD, sa loob niya, meron na siyang controllers available for you to automate yung deployment niyo, as well as yung mga reconciliations ng if you release a new version of your application, kaya na niyang mag-automate yung deployment. Right? Now, in terms of best practices naman when using GitOps, ideally, Ideally, ang ideal approach is kung gagamitin yung GitOps to automate your application deployment, you need to have 2 repositories. one for your application source code, kung nasan lahat nung anything related to your application, yung mga business logic, andi dito sa application repository natin. And then you have yung configuration repository naman kung nasaan yung manifest files natin. Yung benefit of having it in a separate repository is may separation of concern. So yung configuration repository natin, ang concern lang niya is yung state nung state ng application nyo while it's running. While yung sa application source code niyo is yung code mismo ng system niyo. Clear? Another benefit of having it this way is, let's say for example, security-wise, sabihin natin you have 10 developers, right? And then sa 10 developers na yon, ang dapat na nakapag-deploy lang is 2 lang, or yung lead developers lang, right? So with that, pwede yung 10 developers may privilege to commit or push dun sa application source code natin, pero yung team leads lang or yung pinaka-lead lang na developer, yung pwedeng push dun sa configuration repository nyo. So, ibig sabihin, siya lang yung pwedeng mag-deploy dun sa Kubernetes cluster niyo. Clear? So, yun yung additional benefit of having it in a separate repository. Right. Another best practice for when you're using GitOps is to always devise a plan for your secrets management. As a rule of thumb, never commit anything sensitive dun sa Git repository niyo. So if you have yung mga credentials, dapat hindi nyo kinocommit yun dun sa Git repository niyo, right? Kasi may mga scraper na pwedeng basahin yung Git repository, makuha yung credentials niyo. So although may mga tools naman na available that prevents you from committing yung mga sensitive information, so before committing, meron ng like Git secrets, meron ng they can already encrypt or even prevent you from committing any sensitive information sa Git repository nyo. Pero, ang recommended way is if you want yung sa configuration or sensitive information natin, you should use a third-party tool like HashiCorp Vault for your credentials, database credentials, so on and so forth. If you're using AWS, you have 2 options. You could use AWS Secret Manager, and then there's also AWS IRSA, identity role for service account na dun sa manifest file niyo ang ilalagay lang yung service account. Like let's say for example, meron kayong AWS RDS and then you have EKS, right? Instead of yung credentials niyo is nandun sa configuration pa ninyo, using AWS IRSA, you only need to define yung database host, the username na gagamitin ng application, the credentials hindi niyo na i-define. Ilalagay lang ninyo is yung service account. Yung credentials niya is automatically ma-generate through the service account. And then through IAM na siya, yung IAM role na siya, yung pagbigay ng access dun sa database niyo, right? So yun yung safest. And then there's also, lastly, yung always have a contingency in place. Like anything in IT, alam naman natin na laging may nangyayaring masama, right? For Git repository, madali lang naman mag-recover ng Git repository. Like for example, na-corrupt yung Git repository natin, remote repository natin, madali lang naman mag-create na panibagong repository. Kasi whatever we have in the local repository, we can just create a new repository and then push whatever we have in our local repository, right? For Kubernetes cluster, it's more complicated, especially depende din sa GitOps operator na gagamitin ninyo. So you should have a plan na pag nag-down tong Kubernetes cluster niyo, or anything goes wrong sa Kubernetes cluster nyo, dapat meron kayong plan to easily or quickly recreate yung Kubernetes cluster nyo to a new one, or transfer yung Kubernetes cluster niyo or copy yung state ng Kubernetes cluster niyo papunta dun sa panibagong, yung newly created the Kubernetes cluster, right? And then, kung time sensitive yung application niyo, like hindi siya pwede mag-down ng more than 5 minutes, consider din niyo sa plan niyo na dapat yung pag nag-create kayo ng Kubernetes cluster, kasama ni pag-deploy ng application niyo up to dun sa current state niya, dapat take into account siya dun sa plan niyo, right? Sige. So, enough of me talking. Doon na tayo sa demo agad, right? For context lang, ito yung mga gagawin natin yung mga tasks na gagawin natin for yung GitOps workflow na gagawin natin. So we have yung source code and yung configuration files natin. And then, gagawin lang natin, unang-unang gagawin natin is we'll edit yung source code. gagawin lang naman natin is ibabump lang naman natin yung version from its current version to increment lang naman natin siya. Yun yung gagawin natin. And then, i-commit natin yan dun sa local repository natin. And after ma-commit natin sa local repository natin yan, ipupush natin siya dun sa remote repository natin. For the demo, we'll be using GitHub as a remote repository. And then, for our CI/CD, since we're already using GitHub, GitHub Actions na lang din yung ginamit ko for containerizing our application natin. Right? And then, after ma-containerize yan, ipupush natin yan dun sa Docker Hub registry natin or yung container registry natin. Right? And then, once ma-push na ni GitHub yung bagong image natin sa Docker Hub, pupunta tayo dun sa configuration manifest file natin, babaguhin lang natin yung version ng image na currently deployed with the newly released na Docker image. Right? Then, i-commit natin yan sa local repository natin, and then we'll push it to our GitHub repository. And then, we'll let FluxCD, which is yung operator na gagamitin natin, to do its magic. Siya na yung bahalang mag-deploy ng application natin. Right? Clear? So, yun yung mga steps. Mapapansin pala ninyo, yung sa taas nito, kung technically, if you're using Jenkins nga, wala kayong kailangan baguhin eh. Kasi, di ba, pag sa Jenkins, pwede ka mag-release ng image. Kung nag-release kayo ng image using Jenkins niyo, you could still retain that. Ang babaguhin lang ninyo, tatanggalin lang niyo yung si Jenkins yung nagde-deploy. Tapos lalagay lang niyo yung nasa baba. Right? So, napakadaling i-adapt si GitOps. Right? And then for for the demo, again, ideally dapat yung source code tsaka yung configuration is on a separate repository. For the demo lang, pinag-isa ko na lang siya for simplicity. Pero again, dapat separate siya. Clear? And then, kasi most likely, sa setup natin, meron tayong, naka-multi-environment tayo, right? So we have seed, we have dev environment, we have production environment, right? So for that, we have yung application source code natin and configuration natin. And then we also have another repository, which is yung FluxCD system. Sa FluxCD system, yung repository nito, dito nakalagay yung ano yung mga apps na pwedeng i-deploy dun sa target Kubernetes cluster ninyo. As well as, dito din nakadefine yung mga policies ng application ninyo, so on and so forth. Even the user policies, pwede nyo rin i-define dito sa FluxCD system repository. Right? Then in terms of who manages what, yung nasa taas, yung application source code, tsaka application configuration, these are managed by the developers. Kung hiwala yung developers and operations ninyo, yung FluxCD is managed by the ops team. Normally sila yung, in terms of security, sila yung nagmamanage nun, right? So yun, separation of concerns din. Clear? So yun yung for the demo. So I'll go straight to dun na sa demo. Ano yun? Mag-share ako. Kita na. Ayan, kita na. Sige. So, for the demo, pinipare ko na yung GitHub repository natin as well as yung Docker Hub natin, yung container registry natin. So, for the GitHub, meron na tayo, dito, F11 ko na para makita. Kita ba? Anyway, ayan. Yan. So, we have here, 3 repositories, pero ang gagawin lang natin is yung demo app, tsaka yung papakita ko rin yung GitOps Flux. Si GitOps Flux, ito yung FluxCD repository natin. Right? And then yung demo app is yung, dito na yung application source code natin, tsaka yung manifest file natin. And then we also have yung Sa Docker Hub, meron na rin tayong 2 applications, yung demo app Flash saka demo app Django, right? So currently, ang naka-release na latest na image na naka-release sa kanila is 0.014 or 0.014. Yung currently pinaka-latest na image na naka-release dun sa Docker registry natin. Right? Diba? Tignan lang din natin yung may running sa demo natin, meron akong running na Kubernetes cluster locally using Minikube. So currently, for the Django app natin, we have 2 environments, local and seat environment. Sa local environment natin, yung Django application natin, ang version na running sa kanya is 0.14. And then for the production, hindi production, for seat, ang version na running sa kanya is 0.12. Yan. Ganun din for the Flash app. Yung sa local, it's 0.14 yung latest. And then for the seat is 0.12 yung version na gamit. Right? And then, also going to go through lang din quickly yung pipeline natin, which is yung Jenkins CI. Where is it? GitHub, ito. Workflows, release. So, nothing fancy naman dito. Ang laman lang na itong CI na to is to build pull yung source code, then containerization application natin, and then after that, i-push niya yung image dun sa Docker Hub registry natin. So, nothing fancy here. Clear? Right? And then, yan. Gawin natin, pakita ko lang din na gumawa ko ng script just to bump up lang yung version natin from yung current version niya to +1. So, ito yung i-run natin later para mag-bump up lang yung version natin. So, gawin na natin yun. I-update natin yung source code. And then, yung script na rin na to, siya na rin yung nagpupush dun sa GitHub repository natin. Right. So, run ko lang siya. Oops, sorry. So, binump natin yung version from 0.14 to 0.15. Oops. And then, after that, titry niyang i-push yung changes, yung code change natin doon sa repository natin. Alright. So, na-push natin yan doon sa Git repository natin. Punta tayo doon sa GitHub demo apps. Let's go to actions. Mapapansin nyo rito, meron na tayong isang running job. Yan. So it's already building na yung application natin as well as containerizing it and releasing it to Docker Hub registry. Clear? So hintayin lang natin siya matapos. Hopefully hindi ganun katagal. Yan, tapos na. So, nakapag-release na siya dun sa Docker Hub registry natin. So, if you go to our Docker Hub registry, from 0.14, F5 lang natin, we now have yung latest version, which is yung 0.15, right? Ngayon, since meron na tayong bagong version ng application natin, ang next step natin is to update yung configuration file natin. Right? So, gawin natin yon. So, dito sa not here. Dito. So, sa deploy natin, baguhin natin yung version sabihin natin, ang babaguhin lang natin is yung nasa local or dev environment natin. Hindi natin gagalawin yung nasa seat environment natin. So yung local environment lang babaguhin natin na version. 0.14, gawin natin 0.15. Gawin na rin natin siya sa flash up. 14 to 15. And then let's commit that. Stage, git commit. Right. So once makommit na yan, punta na tayo dun sa, we'll let Flux CD do its magic. Hopefully kita to. Yan. May kita nyo dito, dun sa, yung Django local app natin, mapapansin nyo dito, meron tong, sa column na revisions, meron dyan nakalagay main at SHA-1 and then yung hash value. Right. Yung hash value dito is basically yung hash value or yung commit hash na currently yung current state niya. Right? O kung saan niya kinuha yung state na running ngayon dun sa natin, sa cluster natin. You see here, magbabago to in a while. Napush ko ba? Ay, hindi pa pala. Teka. Siyempre, kailangan natin i-push muna sa remote repository. Kinumit ko lang sa local ko. Yan. Push natin sa remote repository natin. And then, let's wait for FluxCD do its magic. So currently, papansin nyo, C95 FE, FDD yung revision na nakalagay dito. And then, later, magbabago yan to reflect naman yung commit hash nung kinumit natin kanina lang. Sige. Yan, may nagbago na isa, C8115F9A1. So nabago na yung for seat application natin, then susunod na yung other applications niyan. Again, kung titignan natin yung revision na yan, kung nag-gitlag tayo dito, may kita ninyo, kung ano yung commit hash na nandito is yun din yung nakalagay dito. C815. So currently sa sit-up pa lang siya si sit-up pa lang yung nababago niyang configuration. So medyo natatagalan siya sa pag-pull ng other config for the other applications. Right? Actually, if we check yung Django app natin, Django sit-up natin. So sa pods, sit-up. If we check kung ano yung image na currently ginagamit niya, may kita niyo, 12 pa din. Sorry, local nga lang pala yung binago natin. Ayan, applied na yung configuration sa other applications natin. C815F9A. Ito, C815F9A. Okay. So, pag ni-refresh natin to, local up. Papansin natin dito na yung image na ginagamit niya dito is yung the one that we defined dun sa configuration file natin. Clear? Yeah. And then, papansin niyo, since hindi natin binago yung sa seat environment natin, it's still using yung version na 0.012 na container image. Right? So yun yung automated na deployment. I'll show you guys naman yung sinasabi kanina na automatic reconciliation. So we'll force na currently yung deployment natin for both our Flash app or for our Flash local app, isang instance lang yung running. We'll force it to increase to, let's say, 3 instances. Pero doon sa configuration file natin, ang nakalagay lang is 1 instance lang dapat yung running. Right? So we'll update this. We'll scale it up to get in 3 instances or 2 na lang para mabilis. Yan. So we'll try to bring it up to, yan. So currently running na siya sa 2 instances. Ay, hindi kita. Pero trust me, it says there 2 out of 2. It says there 2 out of 2. And then later on, siguro a few, depending doon sa interval na ni FluxCD, ibabalik niya yan dun sa 1 instance ulit. Tayo lang natin. Sige, while waiting for it to take effect, pakita ko lang din na yung sa Flux CD repository natin, nag-install kasi ako ng cert manager tsaka ng ingress controller dun sa cluster natin. Yung pag-install natin dun is through GitOps approach din siya. So naka-declare yun dun sa GitOps Flux repository natin, and then under infrastructure, controllers, naka-define dito kung ano yung cert manager na gagamitin. Ay, hindi rin kita. Anyway, naka-define dito yung cert manager na gagamitin at anong version. Right? Ganun din for the ingress controller. Naka-define dito yung version na gagamitin niya through Helm chart. So Helm chart yung ginamit ko dito for to install yung both ingress controller tsaka yung cert manager. Then, dun sa, hopefully nakikita, makapansin nyo dito sa Helm release ko na manifest file, nakalagay dito version is 1.x. Meaning nun na if there's another release dun sa Helm chart na cert manager, for example, currently ang latest version is ni cert manager is 1.15.2. So, kung yung maintainer ni cert manager nag-release ng, let's say for example, 1.15.3, automatically yung cluster natin will pull that change and apply it dun sa install it dun sa cluster natin without human intervention. So automatically ina-upgrade niya yung packages natin, yung cert manager natin. Balik tayo dito. Ayan. Kung makikita nyo dito, from 2 out of 2, binalik niya sa 1 out of 1. Ibig sabihin, since nga, again, sa configuration file natin, 1 instance lang siya, pinilit niyang ibaba yung number of instances from 2 to 1. Clear? So yun yung continuous reconciliation nung current state niyo with the desired state. Clear? So yeah, that's basically it. Yun yung buong GitOps workflow. Questions?
Sir Juno?
Yan ba?
Anyone who would like to ask a question po?
Ay, go sir. Tofu controller.
Ayun, tofu controller. Tofu controller. Pwede ko rin namang gamitan, kunwari, pinili ko si Argo CD, pero magmamanage ako ng Terraform din. Pwede ko bang gawin din yun?
Pwede.
Kasi
pwede,
ayoko namang mag-deploy ng dalawang.
Actually, you could actually install yung meron kang Flux CD. You could also install Argo CD at the same time. So, i-manage lang yung resources na ginagamit ng dalawa kasi it consumes resources din. So,
yung dun sa difference ni Flux CD sa Argo CD, mas madali lang gamitin talaga si Argo CD.
It's the other way around.
Or,
actually, between the or at least in between Argo CD and Flux CD, personal opinion lang to, sir. For me, mas madaling gamitin si Flux CD, especially for those na maintaining multi-environment and multi-cluster. Yun, mas madali siyang gamitin. Unlike sa Argo CD kasi it's more complicated if you have multi-cluster and multi-environment, mas complicated yung setup niya. With Flux CD, sobrang dali lang talaga. Tsaka in terms of yung pagbuhay ng cluster, tsaka recreate yung GitOps nyo, napakadali kay Flux CD. Sobra.
So I assume din na yung resource consumption din niya is mas lighter si Flux CD.
Yes. Kasi wala siyang UI, wala siyang RBAC.
So anyone who wants to...
Yeah. Questions? You're using CSI to pull the secrets from key vault. Is it possible to... AKS cluster. Secrets from key vault. Sorry, yung question is, we are using CSI driver to pull secrets from Key Vault. Is it possible to use GitOps to update our cert in our AKS cluster? Good question. Personally, hindi ko pa siya nagagawa. Pero kung CSI driver siya, dapat pwede. Kasi, tama di ba? Kung whatever file na ilagay niyo dun sa storage nung kung saan nakaturo si CS driver, automatically, yun din yung babasahin nung as a volume nung pad ninyo. Hindi ba? So, I assuming, sir, pwede. Pero I haven't, don't quote me on that. I assuming pwede.
Any more questions po? Use this chance po to get to know more about what Sir Juno has discussed.
Yeah. Oh, ano pala, for those na hindi naka-Kubernetes, you could still adapt GitOps, pero medyo onti lang kasi yung mga operators available, yung na pwede nyo i-apply. Like for example, the way you deploy your application is through apt-get, right? May mga ganun pa ding way of deployment na pag nag-release sila ng application, nilalagay nila sa as PPA and then ipupull from the PPA yung bagong application. Pwede pa rin naman kayo gumamit ng GitOps for that. You just have to find the proper operator that would do automatic reconciliation and yung automated deployment. So yan. Just finding the right operator.
So one last call po. Who wants to ask a question for Sir Juno? For our online attendees, please don't be shy po to ask questions. Okay, so I think that's it, Sir Juno. Thank you so much. So thank you to our audiences online and to our audiences here with us on site. So I'm sure we have learned a lot with what Sir Juno and what Sir Raymond has discussed. So thank you. So just a reminder, we will be giving back we will be giving feedback forms. Sorry, nabubulol na po tayo sa lamig. So yung mga sumagot lang po ng feedback forms will be given the copy of the decks of our speakers and of course the recording. So PSIA is also open for partnership for Tour de Tech. So you may contact the PSIA Secretariat email and me. Nakalagay naman po dyan yung aming email. So PSIA also has an early bird rates for our SoftCon. Next slide, please. So, all right, there. So we have an early bird rate registration, which is until August 31. So for those who are interested, you may contact, of course, the PSI Secretariat email and Ms. Diana Mantalaba's email. So we will show you our early bird rate. So next slide, please. So you may take a photo or screenshot it on the Zoom link. Or you may just visit our website to get to know more about the tickets and the rates. So next slide, please. So I think that's all. So thank you so much once again. So I hope you will have a safe journey home. So ingat po tayong lahat. Thank you. You may now exit po the venue.